Joining us now for World Brief and the review of some of the headlines of today's newspapers from around the world is Adefemi Akinsanya, still on active duty in New York. Good morning, Adefemi.
Good morning, Dr. Rubin. Good morning, Ayon. Good morning, Rufai. Hope you're all doing well. Let us jump straight into what has happened at the United Nations. Now, firstly, the highly anticipated address from Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas did come up on Thursday, and we were able to hear him firstly condemn Hamas and make a clear distinction between the group of Hamas and Palestinian leadership, the Palestinian government. He did not support the actions of October 7th, 2023, and definitely it was important for him to keep a clean line there to say that Hamas and Palestine, in terms of its government, in terms of its leadership, in terms of its people, are not one and the same. Now, on the topic of Israel, very strong words condemning Israel's what he called genocide against the people, the citizens of Gaza most especially. And this is something that we have already been hearing. We do know that in the lead up to the UN General Assembly even starting, there was an independent United Nations panel which did say that Israel was guilty of perpetuating 4 out of the 5 markers of genocide. So the words genocide in this context shouldn't be considered to be too harsh or taking a two-step far, but that's definitely what President Mahmoud Abbas used to describe what was happening against his people. He also used his opportunity. Again, he was appearing virtually, not in person, because the US government did not give him a visa for him to travel to New York, so he didn't come in person. And had he arrived in person, he would have been his usual long-winded self. He would have spoken for far longer than he did, but because this was a virtual pre-recorded link, he did speak quite succinctly, quite quickly, but nevertheless he was able to acknowledge and appreciate the efforts of different countries around the world: France, United Kingdom, Germany, Portugal, Canada, who had taken the opportunity, used their platforms to announce and officially recognize Palestinian statehood. This is something that he definitely appreciated, the people of Palestine appreciated, and something that he wanted more countries to continue to do. He also called on the United Nations itself to officially recognize Palestinian statehood, because he believes that these are among the steps that he would need, that the people of Palestine would need to keep them safe and put more pressure on Israel to take a step back away from the attacks, the incessant violence that has claimed more than 64,000 civilian lives since the 7th of October 2023. Now, speaking of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, he will be the very first speaker on stage today. And again, it will be very interesting to hear what he is going to say. Is he going to be defending Israel? Absolutely. Is he going to be defending his own actions when it comes to the violence that he has led the charge of against Palestine, against the people of Palestine, in the name of obliterating and eliminating Hamas? You bet he's going to do all of that. It will be interesting to see how the world responds to it. Will he have a packed crowd like Donald Trump did earlier this week, or will he see protests? Will leaders get up and leave the grand hall once he takes the stage? Will they show their defiance in that way? It's going to be very interesting to see how he will be received. If we cast our minds back a year ago, when we were covering the United Nations General Assembly, I saw Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. He was shrouded by huge amounts of security. Will that continue to be the case this time around? Of course, all presidents and leaders do have security protocol, but his was far greater. So it will be interesting to see whether or not that will continue to be the case once he takes the stage this morning. Now, taking a step away from the United Nations to the side events, let's talk a little bit about Nigeria. Now, when Vice President Kashim Shettima did take to the stage during his own country address, he talked about solid minerals, Nigeria's resource wealth, and the fact that Nigeria needed to be an active member and making sure that it is in control, firstly, of what comes out of their country when it comes to natural resources and mineral resources, and that this is something that can continue to be used to translate into more growth and greater development within Nigeria. So to that end, I did speak to the Honourable Minister of Solid Mineral Development, Dele Alake, about this thing, especially against the background of the environment and the importance that we're seeing Nigeria take to environmentally stable policies, and whether or not this will have any effect on their own plans to make sure that Nigeria's development continues going the same way. Let's take a listen to what Dele Alake had to say.
When I resumed office after my appointment by the president, I surveyed the landscape of the mineral sector in Nigeria. I discovered that there was a great deal of dormancy in that sector. So the first thing that occurred to me was how to bring the sector from dormancy to vibrancy. And so I had to craft this 7-point agenda, which also is anchored on the president's renewed hope agenda, which is contingent on this diversification of the economy away from the monocultural kind of model that we operated for decades. And you and I know that monocultural thing, dependency on oil for so long. And if you actually do a serious content analysis, an unbiased content analysis of our monocultural economy operations in those decades, we've not actually benefited or derived maximum benefit in terms of societal progress, in terms of societal development, whether technological, political, social, even spiritual, from these oil free flow of petrodollars that we had. In actual fact, perhaps because of the free flow of that petrodollars, we abandoned the constructive, regenerative sectors of the Nigerian economy.
So those were the words of the Minister of Solid Minerals Development. So Dele Alake, I forgot to actually mention, the reason why we were able to cross paths with him is that he actually won 2 different awards yesterday, both of them in recognition of his events when it comes to Nigeria's development, African development, and of course looking at how he's been able to transform minerals and mining within Nigeria. So huge congratulations to him for that. But moving on to our last story on the World Brief, we do see that former French President Nicolas Sarkozy has been sentenced to 5 years in jail for conspiracy surrounding the campaign funding that he sought out of Libya. At that time, Libya was still very much under the dictatorship of Muammar Gaddafi, and it is believed that against the law, Nicolas Sarkozy did conspire to receive campaign funding from Libya. Now, this is something that Nicolas Sarkozy has continued to deny, says that he has kept his innocence throughout. However, what we are seeing is clearly this is something that has not convinced the French courts. So Nicolas Sarkozy will spend 5 years, or will at least begin his jail term even during his appeals process, because he did say that he will appeal. When he does go behind bars, he will be the first French president in modern history to be imprisoned. Those are your stories in the World Brief. Love to hear your thoughts before we move on to papers.
Interesting one there. Okay, are we going to Dr. Bati first?
Yes, please.
Okay, Dr. Bati first, you in Abuja.
Okay. I'll go first then. Now, from former president to potential prisoner, former President Nicolas Sarkozy was sentenced yesterday to 5 years imprisonment. Now, both the far right and the right of the ideological spectrum and Nicolas Sarkozy himself, believe that this is a case of political persecution. For the fact that, one, this 5-year sentence, they say he cannot appeal. Even if he appeals, he's not going to get any kind of respite. So definitely, President Nicolas Sarkozy is going to go into that jail. However, this is not the first time this will happen. He was president 2007 to 2012. Now, when he was seeking re-election in 2012, that was when, problem began. He was first accused for overspending during the 2012 campaign. And then he ended up, of course, being sentenced to 6 years, 1 year imprisonment. He got a 1 year sentence, suspended sentence of 6 months, which he will serve in his house wearing a tag. His wife was also, interrogated, but she was not formally charged. But generally, he has been a divisive figure since he left office. Now, this time around, the issues on the table were 4 offenses about corruption, for which he was cleared, about financial malpractices, which was cleared, about conspiracy, for which he was also cleared. It was only on the lesser or the least of the charges on which he has now been convicted. He's been on trial for about 20 years. He's 70 years old. So the far right and the right, they're saying that this is clearly, as Sarkozy says, a case of political persecution. However, he says, well, even if he has to sleep in jail, he's ready to sleep in jail, but that his conscience is clear because he continues to maintain his innocence. However, the point I'm trying to point out is that, look, France is ideologically divided, and this sentencing of Nicolas Sarkozy is, again, a confirmation of the division that is at the heart of French politics at this moment. However, Marine Le Pen of the left, who had the similar experience earlier in the year, being told that she can no longer run for the presidency, also says this is an act of injustice. On Mahmoud Abbas, his address. Now, yesterday I offered a preview of what Mahmoud Abbas was going to say. And, he stayed on script, saying that he was willing and ready to work with the United States, with Egypt, with Jordan, with Qatar, and other countries, and the United Nations to ensure peace and the rule of law in that part of the world. Second, of course, he accused Israel of genocide, saying that Israel is guilty as charged. He said that nobody is going to take us away from our homeland. All this idea of relocating the Palestinians, he opposed that. But there is division also between the Palestinian Authority and Hamas, because he attacked Hamas. He said, look, what he is looking forward to is a unified framework for governing and maintaining the rule of law in the Palestinian Authority. And then, of course, he supported the idea of the July conference, where the two-state solution was restated by the various members of the General Assembly, 193 members of the General Assembly. However, he says the future will be without Hamas. Hamas will not play a role in governance. Now, Hamas has pushed back to say we are not going to give up our weapons, and that Mahmoud Abbas did not know what he was saying. Israel has also rejected his proposal to say that he was just saying wise words to the West, that however is a terrorist. But the main point is that last Friday, the United States, again in violation of the Convention on Diplomatic Immunities and of the immunity of the United Nations at occasions like this, violated those diplomatic immunities by refusing to give a visa to the delegation from the Palestinian Authority. The General Assembly now voted 145 for, 5 abstentions, 6 abstentions, 5 against, to say that Mahmoud Abbas will address the assembly remotely. But that's exactly what has happened. But whether the ceasefire that Mahmoud Abbas is asking for will come or not remains to be seen. Now that the United States has submitted a set of 21 proposals. So we're still not anywhere yet near peace in that region, particularly with the continuing belligerence and recalcitrance of Israel. Okay. Finally, congratulations to Mr. Dele Alake on the award that he got at the Global Forum on the sidelines of the United Nations General Assembly. He's right about the need to diversify the economy. After all, the recent report from the NBS said, non-oil exports have contributed much. But the thing about mineral exploration is for Nigeria to do due diligence and to learn the right lessons from other countries, say from Australia, for example, where the mining sector is well developed, and to ensure that as we progress with mining and minerals exploration, the people of the affected areas do not find themselves in the same situation, either as the people of Ogoni or the people generally of Niger Delta.
Okay, so a couple of things. Mahmoud Abbas spoke yesterday. We know what he was going to say. Pretty much touched all the points. I don't support what happened on October 7. That shouldn't have been the case. Let's forge a path for peace. The Palestinian Authority is ready to lead that area. But there was also a counter plan that came out yesterday where they were thinking about a new idea of the future of Gaza with Tony Blair leading some form of administrative hub. You know, Tony Blair used to be the leader of the Middle East Envoy before, up to 2015. So that is also there. So when you look at things like that, it's still pretty much convoluted. But as regards Netanyahu, for me, it's going to be a competition who will lie better between Netanyahu and Trump. Because let me tell you what Netanyahu's speech will do. He will castigate all the nations that have recognized Gaza and the Palestinian state, a two-state solution. He will go ahead and say why they have to carry out their flushing exercise against Hamas, despite the fact that Hamas has been decimated. He will justify their various attacks in foreign nations. He will go ahead and say that they need more support from the world at a time like this. He will propagate a lot of right-wing, vile hate statements against the Palestinians in Gaza. He will pander towards the right-wing sentiment in America with the likes of maybe Charlie Kirk and mention, what is going on in America and all of that. He will call President Trump an ally in all of this and try to seek the support of President Trump. And in the end, he will bring out some funny map to be able to show that he's gotten some advancement on the land and all of that and justify what they are doing, in the West Bank now and the E2 area and justify that and justify more occupation. And in the end, tell everybody that they don't know half of what he knows about what is going on there. So I can pretty much tell you this is what is going to be his speech. But does that make the world a safer place? No, it doesn't. And the hypocrisy of America is in supporting sort of like a heinous attack on people because they do not have people that will fight for them and justify. The reason why all of this continues is because the Arab world has also tilted towards America for support, and because of that, they can't go out openly against Israel. Real quickly, as regards Nicolas Sarkozy. Sarkozy, a man that went to the biggest stage in France, an Hungarian immigrant. So for those that kick against migration, Paul Sarkozy, his father was originally from Hungary. And I think apart from the sentiments of people, and they say this is political witch hunt, it's a triumph for journalism. Because there's a French media outfit called Mediapart, an independent French media outfit that really did a lot of research work and brought the evidence. Even Gaddafi's son brought the evidence. There were tape recordings and all of that, and conversations that showed he did send his aide to talk to Gaddafi. And payments were made, although the court did not sanction him on that because they didn't get proper evidence. But there was also an evidence of the money trail. And why the court didn't sanction him on that his campaign actually received the money, is because they didn't see the money hitting the account of his campaign. But through all sorts of means, payments were made. And this money got out. And after Sarkozy was elected, Gaddafi visited France for the first time in about 35 years. And a lot of easing happened as regards those that planted the Lockerbie bombing, because that was part of the deal. So these things happened, and it did happen. So Sarkozy, that at first, we should also forget, that has been dogged for allegation of trying to bribe a judge, can say everything he wants to say that is a political witch hunt, but also there are justifications there. What do you expect Marine Le Pen to say? Because she too has been dogged for all her activities too, and it might hamper election chance. So she will say that on the other side, she's in favor, she's on the side of Sarkozy, that is a political witch hunt. What is pretty much happening is, when you sample what is happening in France, it is only people in the core area of Neuilly-sur-Seine, where Sarkozy was mayor before, that are really saying, oh, this is a witch hunt against him. Generally, a lot of people are even acknowledging this sentence as a triumph for independent media, and they are mentioning the likes of Mediapart for the work they did in this, quest to be able to bring Sarkozy to book. It just shows that no leader is beyond board. The question is, with all the long corruption allegations in Nigeria, when will a former leader be made to account and go to jail. It happened. The likes of Ehud Olmert, former Israeli prime minister, was made to account for his misdemeanor while he was in office. When are we going to have that level of accountability here?
All right, well, not just a praise for the media, also for the justice system. Sarkozy himself, in front of the court, had said this had grave implications as it deepened further a trust in the justice system and the respect for the rule of law in France. And he said that he was willing to sleep in jail. But, I mean, he might appeal, but like had been mentioned earlier on, he would at least spend some days in jail. And that is quite momentous, especially for a former leader in France. So the big question, of course, and all through this trial was, did Sarkozy take money from Gaddafi? Judge Gavarino seems not to have had, presented before her enough evidence to indict him on that count. But on the count that his close aides actually spoke on his behalf to the former Libyan leader, absolutely correct. And this trial has been going on for years and years, and finally now we see a conviction. Perhaps he would go to appeal, but I think very momentous and a big message right there, and spoken by the man himself, is the justice system. In a democratic system, it is important to uphold institutions and that nobody would be above the law or no one would be a sacred cow. Absolutely spot on there. Now, for the mineral sector, I'm glad you had the opportunity to speak to the Minister of Solid Minerals, Dele Alake, because this is a ministry that has been said to be largely untapped. The potential for Nigeria's mining sector in terms of contribution to our revenue is upwards of $700 billion, and yet we're only doing about $20 to $25 billion. And a number of things have been highlighted as being the reason for this. Mr. Alake himself seems to understand the issues surrounding this, but I think what Nigerians want to hear more of beyond the problems and challenges are the solutions, and to actually see this very, largely untapped sector begin to create revenue for Nigeria, as it did in the 60s and 70s, where it was able to contribute between 4 to 5% to the GDP, and not where we currently at 0.2, 0. Even though this administration has done a lot more than previous administration, there's still a lot of ground to cover. I think one key area that Nigerians will be looking forward to as a global player in the mining sector would be to deal with security issues. We've often talked about illegal mining that takes place and is on the bed of insecurity in some parts of the country. I believe that this administration can deal decisively with it in order for us to show up revenue opportunities in the mining sector. So yes, congratulations to him on that award, but I'm sure that a number of people would also say that there's a lot of more work to be done and a lot of potential in that sector. And what we want to hear is not just the issues or the challenges, but we want to hear is a solution and how the government is recovering to ensure that we're able to show up revenue from the mining sector. For me, that's what I would say this morning. Thanks.
Agreed. Thank you, Ayo. Thank you, Rufai. And of course, a huge thank you to you, Dr. Rubin. Let's move on to newspapers today. Let's take a look and see what they are reporting. First and foremost, let's start with the front page of This Day, the newspaper of record. Now, This Day does lead with the World Bank backing the federal government's Renewed Hope initiative when it comes to this war initiative, war development. So that is something that's very interesting and something to look forward to. Moving on to the New Telegraph, though. The New Telegraph does lead with politics, the high stakes of INEC's leadership transition ahead of the 2027 election. So very interesting comments happening there. Let's take a look now at the front page of the Daily Independent. The Daily Independent has 2027, which is, of course, the year of the general election. It says Peter Obi not confused on party to run for president. So a lot of questions there over where he's going to eventually land, where his political home will be come 2027. So the Punch also takes a political lead. Now, coalition demands Atiku Obi's full membership. So essentially, patience is definitely running out. They want to know, are you in, are you out? Having one foot in, one foot out is clearly ruffling feathers within the ADC's coalition, and it will be interesting to see what both Atiku and Peter Obi we decide to do in terms of full membership. Now, Niger Delta militancy is also there. The Niger Delta militancy made Jonathan presidency possible. That is from Tom Ateke. So very interesting comments there. If we take a look at the Nigerian Guardian this morning, it does lead with Nigeria not being broke, but essentially the fact that there's an understanding that fiscal concerns are continuing to linger and perhaps hamper on Nigeria's development. Let's not forget on Daily Trust, which also leads with politics, and it does have Kwankwaso in talks with Nentawe. Kwankwaso being, of course, Rabiu Kwankwaso, someone who does clearly constitute quite a strong threat when it comes to the political order come 2027. So a lot of Nigeria's papers this morning focused on politics, focused on 2027, and as ever, we continue to look ahead to that election. Those are your papers.
Well, thank you very much, Adefemi. Unfortunately, we don't have time to detail or to analyze the stories this morning, but congratulations to the 44th Olubadan of Ibadan, Governor Senator Rashid Ladoja, now Oba Ladoja, who today would be coronated as the Olubadan of Ibadan, which also happens to be his 81st birthday. So congratulations on all fronts. Thank you very much, Adefemi.